Do I give these to you? Okay, thank
Good
you.
afternoon, everybody. This is
Pardon?
the third MNC committee meeting. Today is Monday,
I'm not sure which
January 6, 2020. I call this meeting to order. It's just after 1:30
Okay.
p.m. I would request everybody to silence their phone, and if they have calls, to please walk out and take it if they wish to. With that, is there any media here? I'd like to acknowledge them. Do I see anybody? I don't think so, right? With no media present, I think we have some changes to the agenda. We are going to,
Because you need a motion to approve it, then we'll make changes in discussion.
oh, we have to get the motion first?
Right.
Okay, I ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda as stated.
Second.
Thank you. We need to remove item number 13 because the gentleman from Unit 2129 cannot be present today and has requested a postponement. Is there any other thing that we need to add, committee?
I have to move for that as an amendment.
So we move that we approve the amended agenda.
You didn't make a motion to make the amendment.
What did I say?
You gotta put that on as an amendment, and then we make a motion.
So that's what I said. We need to
You
remove.
didn't do it in the form of a motion, that's all I'm saying.
Just say,
Okay, I move that we remove item number 13 and postpone it to a later date as requested by the owner of the manor.
I'll second.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
I'll second.
yes.
Okay, so now we move that we approve the amended
Vote on
agenda.
that.
Yeah.
You gotta vote on the amendment.
We do?
Yes.
Okay, I think we have a unanimous consent on that. Yes, all in favor?
Now you vote for the amendment agenda.
All in favor of the motion?
All in favor of the amended agenda? Okay, thank you. I'm learning something new every day.
My Robert's Rules class.
I think I have to attend it this Saturday. I have missed it too many times. All right, so the next item on the thing is approval of the minutes of the November 4th, 2019. Do I have a motion for that?
I move for the approval of the meeting report of November 4th, 2019.
Second.
Thank you, Craig. All in favor? Okay, approved unanimously. Oh, chair remarks. In my remarks, I want to mention that we did approve the new street lighting that we are going to see coming up very quickly at our last board meeting. What I hear from my MNC director is that Siemens is going to start, they're actually procuring the parts and they will start installing mid-March. And soon after they start, they will be expediting to install. So later in the year, we will see all of them are new street lights, better than what we have right now. What else do I have here? Oh, all the projects for 2019 are 99% complete. There are a few stragglers which are getting done right as we speak and soon will be done. Do you want to expound on that?
Mr. Chair, be happy to. As you mentioned, the majority of the projects, and I'm alluding to the project log in your report, have already been completed. Some of them that are still on the not completed list are either not fully invoiced or some of the scope is still pending, such as the painting cycle. We're going to be approximately 2 months behind on the painting cycle this year, which is an improvement because we were 4 months behind beginning beginning the 19 fiscal.
Okay.
So we were able to catch up a little bit, but we're still going to bleed about 2 months into this year on
Great
that.
job.
The other projects and programs are wrapping up at this point or have already wrapped up. This is your December report, so it doesn't reflect to the last minute, but most of them are already completed.
Good job, good job.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Our next item on the agenda is member remarks or member comments.
We have
Do we-
3 speakers.
Okay.
The first one is Ed McGill.
Ed McGill, 23902C. I am aware and thankful for the major improvements that the board has accomplished in the Garden Villa area for the Garden Villa building. However, there is one major flaw in the Garden Villa buildings that this past week caused the woman to take a very bad fall. And it's the same one we've been dealing with in the 12 years I've been here. And that is the leaking of water through to the garage. It's in the green area where the green carpet is down, and they have a drain. The drain is supposed to come down, drain into a pipe, and that pipe goes out. You know the problem. We're having that problem in all the buildings now heavily. The mailman fell in October. Thank God he didn't kill himself. He was a little dizzy and sat there for a while. This woman did it last week. And the rain we had last year, 6 people fell in our garage. That's bad. That can be really bad for the board and everybody else. So what I'm saying is, it can't be, I'm not an engineer. Mine is in industrial engineering, but I'm not competent enough to say this seems so simple to do. But I stand down there and I look up at the water coming down, the pipe for the water over here, the water all over the side. The other pipes, some of them leak, the longitudinal pipes leak, some don't. But there has to be a way to capture the water into the pipe as it should be. And then it goes outside. We have enough problem with cars coming in being wet in the rain, and we can't stop that. But we have to be able to engineer something where they work. The last major improvement was a sleeve they put in one end. They stuck it down in the green where it drains down, and they said, that'll work. We now call that the shower, because nothing but water comes through there. And I don't, I look at it, I got a ladder and looked at it. It doesn't look complicated. I must be missing something. So I would appreciate if we could look at it. I don't think we need to go to an outside vendor to try to capture the water in the pipe. It can't be that hard. So I would ask that we take a look at that and that the board, take a look at it. It's happening. Everybody I talked to in this room today from a Garden Villa said, oh yeah, if we all get water, we're all going to have falls. And one of them, the next one, could be fatal.
Thank you, Ed.
Laurie, this doesn't have anything to do with that. Are you running a timer on these things?
You know what? It won't be that timer there,
As long as
but it's
you're watching, yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll keep a timer. The next speaker is Randy Scott.
Good afternoon. I'm Randy Scott, 53721G. I'm also the first vice president of the Gardenville Association. Our president is out of the country right now, so I do the short straw here. But and then the building captain for the building I'm going to talk to. She's out too on vacation. But it's regarding building 3244 and possible of installing permanent ramps and handrail in that building in particular. And some of the background is the back around September, October, there's been 4 of the residents that have fallen before, at that entrance, before the temporary, there is a temporary ramp and rail in there now, which is great. We're also requesting to leave that there as long as possible. But there's been a lot of falls. There's 4 that required 911 calls to have them taken care of. But what we really like to have, and something probably would have to be in the 2021 budget, is to have this part of the budget routine for this building. Some of the buildings don't use their main entrance that much, and some use it a lot. It just depends on how they're configured and set up with their outside parking. So it's kind of a building by building basics. And one of the things that happened, I picked up, in fact, the residents of the building signed a petition. Everybody in the building signed a petition to request the ramp, permanent ramp with handrails, and I can pass that along to you, along with part of the presentation. But they really want to keep the temporary ramp as long as possible. It's set up there, and to request to get in line for a permanent ramp and handrails. One thing that happened yesterday when I was talking with one of the residents, he's a retired Marine Corps colonel, and he said the VA would install it, these ramps with handrails. And I knew they would for houses, but he said they would for buildings. So, and there's certainly a lot of veterans in the community. So I don't know if that's something we could, I didn't really question him a lot or get into a lot of details about it, but he said he looked into it as long as the VA could coordinate the construction with the village, that they would do that for condos or apartment buildings or townhouses. So might be an angle, we could be looked into. I don't know if anybody's done that before or not. So, but that's really the gist of it. It's just to leave the temporary ramp there as long as possible, and to get in line for the permanent one with the ramps and the rails, and then. If you like, some of us could do some research with the VA and find out if that is something that's viable for the future. Would you like me to leave the petition with Lori? Is that okay?
Randy, one quick question. Did you say 3244?
3244, yes.
Awesome. Okay.
Yes.
What kind of building is it?
It's a garden villa with garage, underground parking.
Gotcha.
And a lot of us usually, we use underground parking, but those of us with 2 cars, sometimes you got to park on the street or park where you can. So that's part of it.
Got it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Patricia Lewis.
Sorry. Patricia Lewis.
Good afternoon, I'm Patricia Lewis. I'm an owner, actually, of 2 buildings,
Wow.
apartments 3C and building 2390, and also apartment 3C and building 2393. A week ago Friday, I was in building 2390. This is the same building that you've just heard a bit about. There is a definite water problem. I'm a woman who does not walk through water. You can take that as a joke, or you can realize that I wouldn't walk through water. I was walking on the cement that looked dry. I slipped. I fell. I was unable to get up for 40 minutes. This is the one day I did not have my phone with me. Fortunately, someone came into the parking lot, and I was able to call to them. She called for someone to help me get up. In that length of time, I realized that although my hands were bleeding and my knees were bleeding, and I was in a great deal of pain, I could still move things. So I thought, okay, I haven't broken anything. I've just fallen. Next morning, I, of course, needed to go to the doctor. The ribs were not broken. They were just badly bruised. Same with the knees. The bruises on my arms and ribs were a bright red, quite frightening. I'm fortunate that I didn't fall on my face. very. The point I'm making going through all this is that I'm fortunate. The next person who falls may not be. I would not like to see Laguna Woods have a major lawsuit on their hands. It'd be very easy for someone to fall in there because the cement looks dry, even though there's a puddle. So there must be a committee, or what would be the other word I'd want to use? An inspector that comes through the buildings regularly. If they see water has been there for 2, 3, or 4 days, it needs to be removed. After it's removed, or even before, gentlemen, we need to make sure that that does not keep leaking. It leaks regularly, it leaks when it rains, it leaks when it doesn't rain. It's a dangerous situation. I appreciate your time. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you for bringing it to us. I appreciate it. We'll look into it, definitely.
Appreciate that. Will I be hearing from you to know that you have been looking through, examining this problem?
Now that it has been brought to our attention more than once, yourself and Ed, we will be checking all the buildings for this issue.
Thank you. If I'd had my phone, I could have taken some pictures of that water.
Well,
I waited long enough for someone to come help rescue me,
I'm sorry.
but didn't have my phone.
Thank
And the
you.
next couple of days couldn't leave my unit because of the injuries. Thank you.
Thank you.
This needs to be addressed.
It will be. Do we have anybody else?
No.
Okay. Do we wish to address any of these issues? Anybody on the committee would like to talk about it? Yes?
Yeah, I would just love to hear anything Ernesto knows or the game plan to maintenance strategy on how that stuff like that gets dealt with. And do you see it coming, or is that an area we got to look to revisit?
Mr. Chair, this is an issue that has been going on for some time. We addressed quite a bit of it through the coatings that we put on the floors that come up to the drains. However, the pipes have aged to the point that some of them have extensive corrosion on them. Also, in addition to the pipes leaking, as it was mentioned before, the slabs themselves tend to bleed down as well because they're not monolithic slabs. They're segmental slabs, so there's leakage that occurs because of that. And like I said, the mutual has a program to do coatings that resolve some of those issues. However, at some point, we need to start looking at those pipes and making a determination as to whether we need to change where they penetrate the slabs and to put better fittings in there to prevent that leakage from occurring. So, but that's something that is due to the age of the pipes and, of course, the construction of the slabs of these buildings. So, but that's something that we can look at. We could possibly bring something back to you for possible funding, in the future to consider beginning some sort of improvement process to address that.
Ernesto, everybody is talking about slipping and falling. Is there any kind of thing that we can coat the floor with that would make it non-skid?
Absolutely, that's another measure that you can take. You can roughen up the surfaces in the garages to make it more
Non-skid.
Yeah, so that it makes because the finish on those slabs, it's a shiny finish.
Correct.
So and that it's obviously not the best surface for walking when it's moist. So that's another option that we can look at and determine what the cost would be to maybe roughen some of the surfaces, bring in a machine to do that.
Correct.
But it doesn't solve the root problem, which is
The
the
leak,
leaking.
yeah.
Yeah. So we need to look at
Yeah.
perhaps both of
Yes,
the solutions.
So This one may be more for Steve than for Ernesto, and that is, aren't they talking about something with this new law where there's going to be inspections on certain types of structures? Right, balconies. I guess what strikes me when I hear these comments is, do we have any system to capture the needs? In other words, could you give me a report right now that says, here's the units with the leaks that we need to get to, and we can't get to them because we don't have money, or we're getting to them over the next 18 months? Do we know the scope of the problem? Because obviously, people will come in when things happen, and we can deal with that one by one, but it just seems like, is there anything in our systems that captures all the data so we have a backlog of, because if we're going to do funding, it'd be nice to know how many units we're really, you could say all of them, but it'd be nice to know exactly who needs the acute care, so to speak.
Sure, Mr. Chair, if we have reported problems with those units, they will be captured in a database. We do not proactively go out there and inspect for this type of leaks, unless when we're doing the coatings and we're working around the buildings, we notice that there is a problem, then they're either addressed or they're put in some sort of inspection list so that we can keep an eye on them, but we don't proactively go out there and look for them unless they get mentioned through resident services. So in order to do a program to specifically address it, we would need to proactively inspect them and go out there and make a list of what's needed, take photographs, and assess what will be needed to get them replaced. And that's what I'm referring to, that I can bring to you during the budget process what the cost would be to do that and to create a formal program to start addressing some of those leaks.
Now, how long does it take to do the testing or inspections you were talking about? To look at the floors and look at the corrosion and like that?
Well, we have 43 buildings that are.
I'm just talking about this one.
Just the one? Oh, we can go out there and take a look at that. In fact, we're gonna go out and take a look at this building right away. So, but that's what I'm referring to. When these issues are brought to our attention, we go out there and we take a look and take measures. Some of the measures may be temporary, some of them may be more permanent. Very likely they're more temporary than not, because making the full repairs are costly. But I was referring to actually inspecting all of the units where this can occur and coming up with a program to begin to address them on a formal basis. So, but we will definitely go look at the ones that have been mentioned and see what can be done to resolve the issues for now.
Thank you. Now, there's one last thing which Randy brought up was about the ramp and the handrails. Do we have some kind of a plan, program, anything that we can?
This is another type of request that is addressed on a proactive, reactive basis, rather. It has been mentioned in the past that that ADA does not need to be met in the community. There's multiple requests that we receive throughout the year for ramps, railings, and other improvements to facilitate access to the buildings by the residents, particularly those that are not very mobile. So we bring those to committee because some of them are fairly costly to address and to get direction from the committee. It's been mentioned in the past that the community is not required to meet ADA accessibility, and I believe the board will be reviewing that issue with legal counsel again to see where that stands. But whenever our requests are made, we estimate the cost, we go out there, we evaluate whether it's even feasible to accommodate, and then we bring those to this committee for review and direction.
There was another mention that VA would install it for free. Can we take a little further look into that?
VA. I'm
The VA.
not aware of that program, but we can certainly give a call to their local office and
Yeah.
see if that's something that's available. Absolutely. We'll do
Randy,
that.
do you have any information that can assist Ernesto's department?
You can email me, Randy, and anything
Huh?
or numbers or contacts that you may have.
I have the contact of the resident who retired in the Marine Corps, Colonel Navy, he's got the numbers too, so I'll get that to you.
Very good.
Whatever help is always will cut some time out of your daily, busyness. Okay, thank you. Did we answer all the questions? Yes. All right, so the next item on our agenda is the reports.
Department head update,
Oh, yeah,
number 7.
department head update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don't have anything for you other than Happy New Year.
To you too, thank you. So, the next items are in the consent calendar, but these are only informational, as we discussed it last time. The maintenance expenditure and the variance explanations, which does anybody on the committee have any questions? Yes, sir?
Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve this consent calendar.
Thank you. Any second?
Second.
Craig seconds. All in favor? So the next item on the report would be number 10, review of the TEC Energy Priority Work Plan and deliverables. Madam, are you ready to present?
Mr. Chair, if I may, very quickly, there's two things that we're doing today. As you know, TEC was, it's under contract with the mutual. They were retained back around October 18th to do a couple of things for the mutuals, actually for Third as well as United. One was to evaluate the electrical infrastructure in the mutual and to make recommendations as to deficiencies to that infrastructure. That was their first, and to come up with a plan, long-term plan, on which we can address those deficiencies. So they've completed that portion of their scope of work, and that's what they will be presenting for you today. The other task, there were two tasks. The other task is to look at the possibility of setting up electric charging in the community, whether to do it in the buildings themselves, at the parking locations, or to do it at carports, or to do it independently somewhere else within the mutual so that people can avail themselves of that. And that's part of what their tasks do, it's all about. And they'll be presenting that, and we've also included it in their report, the detail of what they will be doing relative to task 2. So initially, they will be presenting the completion of their task 1, and I'll let them go through that. And relative to task 2, I would like to recommend to the committee that you defer work by TEC on task 2 until the committee has the opportunity to meet with staff and hear staff's recommendations relative to moving forward regarding the electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So with that, I would like to have TEC make their presentation on the deliverables for task 1.
Thank you, Ernesto. We had a phone number we were going to dial in as well. Yes.
Sorry. Do you want to call on his cell phone?
Sure.
It's not working on this phone.
Hi, Brandon. This is Lauren Seymour with the Energy Coalition. You're on speaker. All right, so this is you're on my cell phone, so I apologize if the audio is a bit rough, but you can just ask for clarification if needed. All right, so thank you everyone for your time today. My name is Lauren Seymour, and I'm a project manager with the Energy Coalition, or TEC, or TEC. And the Energy Coalition is a 503c nonprofit, and we empower local communities to jump into the clean energy future. Today with me I have Rich Williams from TRC, and then on the line we have Brandon Knight from TRC as well. TRC provided the bulk of the analysis and recommendations in the report, and they are the technical expert engineering firm that was supporting the project. So today we'll review the Task 1 activities and findings, and then we'll spend some time, as Ernesto mentioned, kind of reviewing the Scope 2, or the Task 2 scope, and then hopefully we'll hear after that what the committee decides. I ask, if possible, that we can hold questions till the end, and then we have Brandon on the line, and I'll invite Rich up as well, and you can ask us questions then. So just wanted to say we realize that Third has many competing priorities, as we've heard some issues today, so we appreciate you being generous with your time. I know there's been a lot of time spent on this report and project and back and forth, so we just want to make sure that we're all, on the same page and meeting the same objective. So thank you. So here's an agenda of what we will be covering. For Task 1, we'll be looking at the electrical infrastructure assessment that was completed, and then we'll dive into the Scope 2 review, and we'll follow that with questions and next steps. So before I jump in today, I want to define what electrical infrastructure is. So I have this diagram here to help everyone understand what was embedded in this. The project team for Task 1 was tasked with performing an assessment of the current electrical infrastructure throughout the Laguna Woods Village. And the assessment contains detailed information associated with the electrical infrastructure components, as well as recommended short-term and long-term actions. So I want to provide an overview of the electrical infrastructure and the equipment needed to carry grid-supplied electricity to the local consumer. And so for this assessment, it focused on the local infrastructure equipment, which starts from the transformer to the end use. So up on the screen, that would be the components in the gray box there. So starting with the transformer is a static oil-filled device which transforms the voltage level, so it can either increase or decrease the voltage level, and that is to keep power and frequency constant. When Tech and TRC came on board as the energy consultant, we heard on numerous occasions about aging infrastructure and SCE transformer failures. And transformers can fail for a number of reasons, including the end of the transformer's useful life, electrical overloads, as well as manufacturing flaws. Next, we have the electric meter. So this measures electric energy that's consumed. Then we have the switchgear. The electrical switchgear is made up of various pieces of electrical equipment used to distribute power to individual electrical loads. That could be AC units or other outlets, electric ovens, etc. And this provides protection when there are electrical incidents, so overloads or if there's an equipment failure. The switchgear is a general term comprised of a single electrical panel or assembly of panels on which there are switches, fuses, instruments, and other electrical equipment mounted used to serve the electrical load. And overloads can cause outages on the switchgear. Next, we have the sub-panel. So this is separate a separate smaller electrical panel that is fed from a larger piece of switchgear and serves other electrical loads. And then we have the circuit, which is a path between two or more points along which an electrical current can be carried. So in our case, this is a conductor or wire that serves an outlet, elevator, or other electrical load. And again, the circuits can become overloaded and burn up. So let's dive in for Third Mutual. Before reviewing the details of the electrical infrastructure reports, I wanted to just do a high-level review of the Task 1 scope. So the task was to perform an assessment of the community's current electrical infrastructure with the deliverable as the electrical infrastructure assessment report that we will be covering next. And as indicated in the scope of work, our approach was to perform a review of the community's electrical systems and infrastructure for the current state. So our objective in conducting the assessment was to identify deficiencies and upgrades required to accommodate existing load. And in doing so, we aim to address the following questions. What does Third Mutual need to address now to avoid outages and damage to electrical infrastructure equipment? So what are prioritized actions? And then for long-term actions, what should Third Mutual focus on in the next 5 to 10 years to ensure electrical infrastructure can withstand increasing EV charging loads? And this would be addressed in greater detail as part of scope, the Task 2 scope. So our first step was to gather data. There were various sources that were shared by VMS, including site and electrical plans, as well as a review of previous energy studies. And we also requested data from SCE. I do want to take a moment to address the challenges that were experienced collecting this data from SCE. So our ask was to collect detailed information on the transformer locations, capacities, and loads. And this was hindered by SCE due to system confidentiality rules. I think it is important to note here that SCE was not quite clear with what they could and could not share. And so there was some back and forth for several months with various departments within SCE. And eventually the conversations with SCE about the request came to a head in June of last year when they confirmed that they would not share the data that had been requested. And so this transformer information was very important to get from SCE since the transformers serving the sites we visited also had unconfirmed loads from residential sites in the surrounding areas. And so it was decided through coordination with VMS that we would continue moving forward without this information, particularly in light of the fact that SCE indicated they would analyze sites identified for additional load to confirm the associated transformers could take on additional load, such as electric vehicles. And so Appendix C of the report provides a timeline showing correspondences and some of the challenges that were experienced while trying to collect this data from SCE. And this process to try and collect the data came to some unforeseen challenges and delays of both resources and time for the project. Ultimately, though, SCE stated that any SCE equipment upgrade costs due to additional electrical load would be borne by SCE. So next were the site visits. Due to the size of the community and the similarities across infrastructure, a representative sample of sites throughout the community were selected for evaluation. Most of the multifamily facilities that are of similar size are also very similar electrically. And so the focus of the fielded sites was to get a sampling that would be representative of different types of units in the Third Mutual area. And so we inspected some of the transformers and switch gears for the parking garages for buildings C219, C340, and units at 5370 Punta Alta. We also examined the carports and garages at C307, C327, and C344, as well as single-family homes at C37. And then we inspected the solar panel electrical panel installations at C219. And the specific dates of the site visit are listed in the reports if you're interested. So after inspecting the electrical equipment, TRC rated the condition of that equipment based on the asset condition evaluation criteria. The criteria were used to rate the electrical equipment at each of the locations that were fielded. And by fielded, I mean we went out and looked at those sites. So when we say something is excellent versus poor in the report, we had a methodology that went hand in hand. There were 4 criteria that we looked at. We looked at asset age, so the useful life of the equipment based on its age. We looked at the asset condition, so seeing if there were any visible issues observed in the field, like rusted or corroded equipment, broken equipment, etc. We looked at the asset performance, so if there were any known reliability issues with equipment, such as frequent breaker trips or low voltage. And then lastly, we looked at the level of maintenance, so how often does the equipment get inspected and maintained? And Appendix B in the report shows a summary of how the inspected assets were all rated, and that's elaborated on throughout the report as well. So this is just a snapshot of that, and I apologize, the font is very small. So next, the findings. I first want to say that VMS staff is doing a really great job of maintaining their equipment. And it's evidenced by the rare failure of components and the minimal electrical downtime for this equipment that is decades old. So here's a screenshot of part of the appendix table that shows the inspected gear and the asset condition rating. In summary, most of the equipment is original to the facility and has not been upgraded, and that's except for some of the sites with solar. The majority of assets are rated as adequate to good, and there are parking garages experiencing outages, and this is mostly seemingly due to the higher concentration of vehicles that are charging. So for the cul-de-sacs, carports, and parking garages, the existing main and residential panels are in marginal condition. There are undersized circuits serving garage outlets that are overloaded, which is causing multiple circuit trips. Many residents are charging golf cart batteries off 120-volt circuits, causing overloads. And ultimately, increasing the EV charging load will result in circuit overloads and outages if infrastructure is not upgraded. So after completing the site visits and reviewing the data collected, we developed the assessment reports with findings and recommendations that you have received. And based on those findings, we developed some short-term recommendations as well as long-term recommendations. So for short-term recommendations, repairs on the outlet circuits that are fed from the house panels should be prioritized in our opinion. And then adding additional 20 amp circuits to the garage to accommodate the EV charging demand is also recommended. And then at least 2 additional circuits are recommended to be added. Additional analysis on this recommendation will be provided in Task 2 once we determine the recommended charging site locations across the 3rd community. The estimated cost per circuit is about $1,500. And for 5370 Punta Alta, the same recommendation would apply with the addition of a sub-panel, which is estimated to cost about $4,000. Lastly, for the long term, we recommend that Laguna Woods Village conduct regular annual inspection cycles to ensure system integrity. Our understanding is that VMS staff do have regular inspections and are refining their preventative maintenance plan. And then just a note that the costs here were estimated based on typical equipment and labor costs to repair and replace such equipment. So this slide summarizes the estimated upgrade costs for the recommended short-term upgrades. So based on the findings, the estimated upgrade costs range from 1.45 to 1.6 million. Some of our assumptions were that the similar facilities across the community require the same short-term upgrades. And then the recommended upgrades do not assume that additional load is added to the current infrastructure. And so the recommendations would be subject to change based on the community-wide strategy for electrical infrastructure upgrades and EV charger installations, which would be addressed as part of Task 2. So the results from this assessment will be used to develop a community-wide strategy for electrical infrastructure upgrades with a focus on EV charging installations. So next, we'll kind of spend some time reviewing the proposed scope for Task 2.
If I may, do you have any questions on the deliverables for Task 1 on the infrastructure?
Yeah, back on, I think 2 slides previous to this, one of your assumptions was, yeah, at the bottom there, recommended upgrades do not assume additional load is added to current infrastructure. So even if we upgraded it, from what you're saying here, any additional load could still possibly trigger an overload?
Hi, I'm Rich Williams with TRC. And so what we meant by that was to accommodate the existing infrastructure, the charging at the carports. This upgrade would serve that load. Additional load, we mean as far as adding electric heat pumps or any other major HVAC or heating ventilation equipment that's added. So if, for instance, there were gas heaters that are converted to electric, we were not accounting for that. This was largely just accounting for the introduction of more EV charging or golf cart charging at the sites.
Okay, how do you know how many to expect? And how do you base your load on that?
Yeah, so that's what we're anticipating in Task 2 to look into. So the growth of EV adoption in the community and the trending in the projection of adoption. And that's going to be, that's why we have we address it as, subject to change given the amount of folks that are adopting those EVs and the expected growth that we will explore in Task 2.
Mr. Chair, if I may real quick provide some clarification. The sample that TEC inspected is very, very limited. The depth into which they went to evaluate loads is very, very limited. So they're providing a very surface, look at what you have out there. VMS has supported the infrastructure that you have on a reactive basis. We don't go out there and start replacing panels, start replacing conduits, conductors, transformers, unless they failed on us. This is typical of most facilities, most equipment that is managed by anybody. They do not have a program to proactively replace this equipment as the equipment, the equipment ages. It's usually a threshold of failure. So if we're anticipating that this equipment is corroded to the point, or that the loads have exceeded the capacity of this equipment and we're experiencing trips on the breakers, then we go out there and we take a look at these panels. And we've done a number of those. We've replaced a number of those panels. What really needs to be done at this point is to delve a little bit further into what we have relative to each of the manors, what kind of loads are coming out of those manors. And that include the loads that are anticipated for EV charging. With that said, and I know we haven't done task 2, staff is recommending that we hold off on task 2, so you allow staff to actually work with contractors, independent contractors, to get better pricing on what it would take to actually upgrade some of these circuits and some of these panels. And we can bring that information to you at no cost. The contractors that are working for us right now can take a look at that infrastructure and give us a price per building as to what it would cost to actually do those upgrades. Relative to EV charging, which is task 2, our recommendation is that you hold off on that and you allow us to actually look at those numbers and bring them to you, because it would be wonderful to put together an overall plan. But if that plan is too costly for us to implement, it doesn't mean anything, we're not going to implement it. We've looked at some preliminary costs with some of our electrical contractors to do upgrades to Garden Villas and LH21 buildings to be able to provide a plug at each of the parking spots. And that number is just through the roof. I have some of those costs with me today, and I can share them with you, but I can tell you that they're in the range that they're just not financially feasible. So before we go into task 2 and come up with a plan, we need to really look at the specifics of what we have and where we can put charging in the community. And it's looking from the costs that we've received so far from contractors to do upgrades to these buildings, that the better option will be to create charging stations outside of the buildings, not to actually meter them individually at each of the parking spots. So staff's recommendation relative to task 2 is to hold off, allow staff to look at the costs associated with doing upgrades, and to look at the community as a whole as to see where the best opportunities are, to see if there is opportunities for capturing grants and things like that. So a lot of this that are mentioned in the task 2 of the TEC, staff feels that we can take that portion of the work in-house before we task an outside consultant with providing that information for you. So that's where we're coming from at this time. Relative to your question before, what they're looking at is essentially this panels being over capacity if we add the EV charging loads, and that's a fact. We know that already. We also need to, if we're going to do some upgrades to an existing facility, it would really behoove us to get an electrical engineer to actually look at what the usage of electrical equipment is within that building, and to look at each individual building and look at the cost to actually upgrade those facilities. But staff's recommendation at this point, given the findings that they made relative to their small sample, that we continue to address the infrastructure on a reactive basis. That what you heard from TEC today is that the infrastructure that you have out there is mostly original. However, it's not failing. It's in the adequate range. So why go out there and start changing that infrastructure unless there's a real need for it? So we need to get to that need first before we start investing additional dollars on. So we're essentially recommending that, one, task 2, that you allow staff to do a little bit more investigation and bring some figures back to you before you engage TEC to move forward on that. And relative to task 1, that given the findings of TEC, you allow staff to continue to look at the infrastructure on a reactive basis.
Madam from TRC or TEC, have you guys finished in your thing? Does anybody else have any questions from our panel?
No, they're done. They're done with the deliverables of task one. They were going to go over the scope of work for task two, if you want to allow them to go through that, and then we can have further discussion after that.
Huh?
Well, we're at
I see Bert over there. Bert,
we're
is
at
this
this
a quick
chart. I just got a
question?
question.
A quick one?
Okay, yeah. On the 53 parking garages, 518 parking garage circuits, you're looking at each of these buildings. Okay, you've got panels that are there for individual manners. You also have a panel for elevators, and you have a panel for the common area of the building. Okay, so I'm confused when you're saying, we got three separate sources in 53 different buildings. Does that come to 318? I mean, what does that mean when you're looking at this? Did you look at all of those different situations?
So we didn't look at all of those situations, given that we had the limited representative sites. I know for the parking garages, there's a main switchgear that is in the below unit parking garages, and that was the main switchgear that we're looking at, along with the neighboring sub panel, and that is what is being accounted for in those figures. So as for the main community sub panels that may be above the parking garage, myself, I did not look at those. I would have to go and consult my colleague who was also on one of the audits. But I believe this number just incorporates the switch gears and the sub panels that are just in the carports right above the units. That answers your question.
On the outer wall.
That would be, it was in the interior wall, so yeah, of the, I guess it's below the unit, not necessarily subsurface, but below the unit parking.
Not then the
Do not believe so.
Thanks.
There are any other questions? And if not, I can hand it back over to Lauren to discuss the task two
Okay.
scope.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm a little confused, probably more than a little, but just, are all these projections strictly to support EV charging stations, or are we inadequate for the existing loads that the buildings are facing today? I guess that's question one. And if we need to upgrade, why do we need to upgrade, other than EV charging stations? Is the scope anywhere outside of that? And then number two, I just want to put out there, and I'm open to anything, but I really support what staff is recommending. Don't know if we need a motion on it or not, but I really support it. And I absolutely, with no offense intended, I don't see any point to go through the scope definition until you come back with what you think is the best way to move forward, and then we can dig into it and really make a meaningful analysis of it.
Is there an answer?
So I think that there was a question in there, and the question is for you. And the question was relative to what your recommendations are for the infrastructure. Are those relative to EV, adding EV charges, or is it relative to the existing loads?
Yeah, so these are relative to the existing loads. And so when we had heard from staff that there was circuits in these garages and carports that were tripping, when we did our site visit, we saw that a lot of golf carts and even some of the EV cars, the Teslas and Leafs, were plugged into the 120-volt circuits. So given that, it was based off the existing load. So the projection that would be potentially done in task two would be, okay, if we assume or we look into how much EV adoption may occur in the community, then what would we need to accommodate that, i.e. the carport chargers that are external to these carports, as Ernesto was saying.
So let me ask a clarifying question on that. If nobody was plugging in their golf carts, you don't believe those things would be tripping, whether it's electric cars or golf carts, whatever, you think that's what's creating the excess loads from the research you did?
From what we did, that's what it seems. But as Ernesto said, there would definitely need to be some sort of in-depth electrical analysis to confirm that.
So to answer your question, the tripping is due to the electric vehicles charging. It's due to the golf carts and to the illegal use of this, of this outlets. If you take that away, I don't think you're going to have a problem. So that's why we want to look at it ourselves and make a determination as to whether we can do it within the buildings and within the carports at a reasonable cost, or we want to recommend to the board that we look at alternate locations to install charging locations, similar to what we did in the back of the building here, to allow people to charge without affecting the electrical infrastructure of your buildings and carports.
So is it fair to say you'll come back to us with probably some adjustments to the scope that's in this proposal that I'm looking at right here by the time you're done researching everything? And
What I'm suggesting is that I'm going to come back to you with a plan.
right, that's what I'm
You know?
saying. And you're saying, so I'm back to where I was worried. Probably don't need to see this
Yeah,
today.
no, we don't need to look at scope two. What I'm saying
Okay.
is we can take a scope
all I was
two
looking for.
in-house, and we can go ahead and, avail ourselves of the estimates and,
All right. I make a motion that we follow staff's recommendation.
No.
I'd like to amend that motion.
Yes.
There's no second here.
Second.
Second.
So I'll second it, and then I'd like to
Then
make
you-
an amendment that we change the second part of staff's recommendation to the.
Mike's not on.
Oh, I'm sorry. We changed the second part of the staff's recommendation to review and provide recommendations as required, and of the scope of work. In other words, hold off. Review and provide recommendations
John, did you get
as
that?
required.
Did you get that?
I know that Lori got it. Because
Both
I told her
Johns.
ahead of time what my.
It sounds within the scope of what Ernesto
Yeah.
already recommended.
yeah, that's essentially what I'm recommending, that we're going to take scope two and we're going to revise it, and we're going to bring you back, not a revised scope, we're just going to bring you back a plan based on that, revised scope.
Right, I would visualize this plan says EV, and it might talk about if washer dryers show up. I mean, it would cover all load issues, not just the EV issues, correct?
Well, it will cover the EV issue only, which is task two for them. We're going to look at EV charging. Do we want to do it in the buildings? Do we want to do it in the carports? Do we not want to do it there? And we want to do it maybe in the parking lot? How do we locate it throughout the community? Do we have the electrical infrastructure to be able to provide it? What the cost will be? So all of that, but just relative to EV. What I suggested with the infrastructure is, given their findings that the infrastructure is in decent shape, that we continue to do what we've been doing, which is a reactive approach to replacing this equipment. So don't allocate any funding at this point unless we see that it's eminent that this equipment is about to fail.
So John, do you still want to do your amendment since it was in the original motion?
Let's ask Laurie if
The
she...
original motion says that we will confirm the scope of work on task two, and I don't want to do that.
No, he just, he recited, well, Lori, what do you have as the current motion? Because I was going to go what Ernesto said when I made my motion.
A motion was made for staff to bring back an analysis to provide independent EV charging stations to reduce the current load on the existing equipment.
Is that good enough for you?
That sounds pretty much the gist of it.
Okay.
Okay with that, John?
All in favor?
Yeah.
Thank you. So with that, do we wish to go through the...
No.
No, thank you. I think we've just summed it up, that we will,
It's on hold till we.
it's on hold till we...
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for having us.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Brandon.
Next item on our agenda is building and carport lighting timers. That's item number 11.
Mr. Chair, very briefly, this is provided to you for information purposes. You had requested that we bring this issue to you in light of numerous concerns from residents on the lighting around buildings, that it's either on when it doesn't seem to be needed, or it's off when it's dark out there.
Correct.
And part of the problem is that the majority, well, not the majority used to be, but now only 43 of your buildings remain on timers. Timers, as opposed to sensors, they respond to time. So you can set them and they'll go on and off relative to the timer. Whether it's dark out or not, it doesn't really care. It goes by the timer. So it requires for staff to look at this timer at least 4 times a year to be able to adjust them to daylight savings. And even then, we cannot accurately program it so that they go off when it's light out or turn on when it's dark out, because we can't predict the weather. So going from timers to light sensors, it addresses that issue because you don't no longer subjected to the timing, but you're subjected to just the lighting level. And then if it's dark, the thing goes on. Part of the problem that occurs with its timers is that, of course, besides the safety issue of having areas of buildings that are dark, it generates a large number of calls to our resident services from residents that are concerned that it's maybe a nice day out and the lights are on and they don't need to be, and they say, well, you're wasting our money. Or it's, we get a bad day where it's cloudy and it's dark and the thing is, it's off. So that'll eliminate that. We anticipate that just by doing this, we're going to be saving approximately about $10,000 a year in staff time to address these issues. To replace them from timers to sensors, we're looking at about a $35,000 expenditure, and we're planning on doing that through our operations. So you don't need to appropriate additional funding for that. We're going to be doing it with our current operations dollars. And it's going to take approximately 14 months to complete, so we're gonna bleed this work into next year. So by next year, we'll be able to complete the work. Again, there's really no action to be taken on this, just to let you know that we're addressing it. The majority of your buildings have already been taken care of. We only got the LH21s and the Garden Villas to do. So it's a relatively easy and appropriate next step to take to change them from timers to sensors.
So 14 months starting when?
If you authorize us to proceed now, we'll begin the work this year. So early, maybe this month, or, as soon as we can gear up our staff and schedule our staff to begin to do the work.
Awesome. Oh, yes, John.
Just one question on it, and that is, when you do these replacements, what's your anticipation for useful life? Is it indefinite, or is it enough to be on a rotation where these dollars will get respent every 5 years, 10 years? How does this money work moving forward? You deal with them reactively when something goes wrong? What's the strategy on it? When you change it to a sensor, how long does the sensor last?
They have a very long life.
Okay.
I don't have the specific manufacturer.
That's okay. Just wanted to make sure it wasn't like a yearly thing that we were.
No, absolutely not. It is something that you would put on, and it should be in good shape for at least 10 to 15 years.
Does this
Sensor.
Does
The
sensor need to be cleaned if it rains on?
typically not. They're outdoor sensors. These are similar to the sensors that our street lights have above them, that turn them on, turn them off. And they've been there for close to 50 years, and they're still operational.
So your report says you're, basically in the process of doing it. Do you need a motion, or you just go ahead and do it?
No, we're going
Yeah,
to go ahead and
so-
proceed unless you were
to
adamant
stop
about
us? Yeah,
not
no, we're
doing
not,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
At least I'm
We're not
not.
going to stop you. We just want you to
Okay.
move right along.
Yeah, move on.
So we're
Continue.
moving forward. There was a concern expressed from Kush that, about this issue because he gets calls from residents. So we wanted to make sure that we brought it forward and we provide you a report and let you know what we're doing.
Awesome. Just move along. Thank you, sir. Okay, so we come to the next item, which is kind of our very pet peeve about the dryers timer problem. And this is again a item that we are going to review and file, but we're going to discuss it and we're going to ask you for some more information, Ernesto. So please go ahead and tell us what you brought to us.
Sure, I'll go ahead and summarize the report.
Yes.
So when this was put together back with the 2019 business plan, the idea was to set the cycles on these new dryers, the new dryers that you obtained, 373 brand-new dryers, and to set the cycle at a cost of 20 minutes for 25 cents. That was anticipated to generate a revenue of about $110,000, which it's coming fairly close based on the revenue that we received from the laundry rooms this year. That essentially, we received about close to $210,000 in laundry revenue. So assuming that 50% of that is attributable to the dryers and 50% attributable to the washers, we're looking at about $105,000 that was collected just for the dryers alone. That's about 209,000 loads of laundry. So we are currently set up to charge 50 cents for the 40 minutes, but it's important to note that it's costing us about 71 cents to run the machine for that period of time. So we're losing approximately $44,000. We're not losing it. The board decided that they would be subsidizing that cost, because it's really an amenity to the community.
Can I ask you a question before you move further? We still haven't had a full year's amount of revenue, correct?
That is correct.
So we still kind of assuming that with what we collected, so much will be collected in a year.
That's correct. It's going to be fairly close, but we haven't really gotten that.
Okay, good.
So we're looking at if, for instance, and you can set the timing any way you want. It's really a policy decision. But for you to be able to,
We need to have one meeting, please. Okay.
Just to give you some ideas as what the cost would be, we provided you a table of the cost per minute to run the dryer. But just to give you an idea, right now, as I mentioned, we're essentially subsidizing close to $45,000. If you were to charge the 25 cents for, say, a 30-minute dry, and assuming that each person completes a 60-minute drying time, the loss would increase to about $96,000 from $44,000. So it's important that you take in consideration what that additional cost will be to the mutual. But again, this was meant to be an amenity, a benefit to the residents. So we're looking for direction as to what to do from here. The recommendation is to receive and file the report, but we're looking for direction. If you don't want us to do anything, we continue to do what we're doing right now. If you want us to change it, we're looking at about $6,500 of staff time to change the timing, and to provide additional dry time for the 25 cents. But again, we're looking for direction from the committee.
Yes.
I'll just start with a clarifying question. Ernesto did an amazing job of getting a lot of information very quickly to us, and some of this stuff you don't even have because it came to an email right before the meeting. When you did the analysis of the additional cost, if we were to subsidize further for our residents, you did some math, and you said if you were to charge 25 cents for 30 minutes, and we assumed that each person completed 60 minutes drying time, the loss would be .568 times 170,000 roughly. And I just couldn't follow where you picked up those numbers. What is .568 and 170,000? I mean, they don't tie into the 104,000 loads that I thought we were using as our assumption of how many were being done. So I got confused.
Sure. I'll let Chris clarify those numbers. He put them together for me. Chris, you want to take a look at that? You have a copy of it? It's right here. This is what's okay.
Good afternoon, Chris Naylor. I'm your analyst reporting to Ernesto. The original question that we addressed in the email sent to Mr. Pearlstone was based on a 60-minute drying time. So your cost would actually be a little bit over $1 in energy, but you would be receiving 50 cents. So that's where we were able to determine the 56.8 cents in loss. Then we multiplied that number by the 170,000 loads, and that's where we found the $96,000.
Well, the 170, that's probably, thank you, that definitely helped me understand the loss, but
Sure.
where are you getting 170,000 from? Because up above that, you said there was 104,000.
Where are you reading that?
Email.
Oh, that email,
That
sorry.
you chose not to read.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm kidding.
Not chose, it was kind of past my.
Don't get defensive on me, I'm just saying.
I believe the question is, should we have used 104?
Well, it's 104,000, then it says 209,796 loads of laundry, but somehow that number changed to 169,671 when you did the math on the loss.
I apologize. It appears that it's a typo.
It should be 104, right?
Is it 104 or 2
No,
or 1?
it's 209.
209.
Oh, 209.
Well, hang on, before you say that, didn't we say there was 209,000 loads divided by 2 with a half being wash and half being dry?
Yes. So
It
it's
should be
104,000, but a load of laundry plus 50 cents. So it goes back to the 209,000.
Oh, because you did it, do you have to go through 2 cycles? Is that where we're going with this?
Yes, that was the assumption that everyone was going to continue to use it for
Okay.
60 minutes.
I have a suggestion for this. Since we haven't had a full year's worth of actual cycles that we have, you understand what I mean? That our machines got fully installed by March of 19 or end of March. So why don't we take the actual readings for the year so we understand that we did 104 or 204,000 loads and so much money. And then we will have a proper calculation. We are just imagining or assuming that we did this and we got this much money or this is how much we will spend. I know we are just about a couple months away from that 1 year period. So that would give us a good result of our calculations. Because our whole goal over here is to provide a happy solution for our residents. We are trying to give them better drying time for the kind of machines we have. We're not trying to nickel and dime them, or even at any cost, we will have to increase the drying time because the machines are not doing the job that they are expected to do in the 20 minutes time. So our whole focus should be on making our residents happier than they are. I can't say happier because they're not happy. So
Less unhappy. They were. It
less
was always the
unhappy.
intention.
Huh?
It
Beg
was
your
always the
pardon?
intention that people would be drying their clothes for 40 minutes. That's the recommended drying time. The board just wanted to provide them another option. So you could do small, medium, and large loads.
Yeah.
Many of the residents, especially if they're carrying the clothes, doing smaller loads more often, 25 cents. That's kind of why they wanted it. But for the most part, the dryer should be working fine for 40
That's what
minutes.
we thought, but it's not happening. So 20 minutes is a good time for a small load, but most people are coming back to us and saying, our clothes are remaining wet. And we don't know, we're not some police people to go and check, hey, are they dry or are they not? So we are just taking a kind of their word for it. So that's why we are trying to do this. So we need a better assumption on this. Yes, John?
I have no problem with what you're suggesting, to kind of look at it on an anniversary basis and
Yeah.
regroup, but just so we walk away with something to think about, I don't have my calculator pulled up here, but 56.8 cents is the loss. If we move this to 30 minutes for a quarter, which would probably be very favorable to our residents if we could announce something like that, 56.8 cents, and then you'd multiply that times 209,796, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you happen to know what the answer to that math equation is? Just so we have that number. I mean, I can ballpark it in my
Somewhere
head.
100 provide that.
Probably more like
115,000 or so.
220 grand, but, I mean, I'm sorry, it's 120, I'm not gonna guess. Times 209,796. So I get 119,164 versus what you had ballparked at 96,000, et cetera. So,
Yes.
so we're looking at about 120,000, like literally, if we had $120,000 lying around right now, we could say appropriate that, and we could then offer 30 minutes for 25 cents. And the hidden potential benefit there is not everybody may use a full hour. They may only do 30 minutes and walk away if it's a small load, and your math didn't account for any of that. So if 30% of the people do that, and we don't know if they will or not, they probably won't.
No, the assumption was that they were going to use it for a
The full hour, right. So in other words, it may not be the full 120 grand is the point I'm trying to get, trying to give us something to digest.
Probably something in between.
So, you know, looking to Ernesto and looking at you guys, we should try to find this money somewhere, in my opinion, just putting it out there as a starting point for discussion. You know, we want to offer, so nobody's happy with the current dryers. I haven't had one person say, we really appreciate the new dryers, they're working really efficiently, and I think it's a good value. I mean, it's the other way, it's, you know, I mean, people like to complain about almost everything, it seems, around here, but the truth of the matter is, this is so consistent amongst all of us, we all hear it, that you have to give it some credence. You made some good points in prior discussions, that some of it's they don't know how to do the loads, there's certain educational things that might help the process here, but it's still something that doesn't seem to be working to the benefit of our residents. So we're subsidizing a chunk of it right now and getting negative reaction. If we're gonna subsidize, let's try to get some value for the subsidy and try to make people happy with it. So that's where we should leave it as we come back. I think it should be a future agenda item, and we should come back with, maybe you could start with a proposal, and we could then digest it, or we can come to you with what we want to see, and something like that.
So are you, if, so we can come back with something concrete, are you interested in maybe doubling the time? So essentially, for 25 cents, you want to go to a 40-minute dry time?
The math was provided was 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
30.
And that sounds good, because then you're looking at 50 cents for an hour, if I understood the math. That sounds right to me, if we can make
Right,
that
right.
affordable.
So we could calculate that and bring it back to you.
Yeah, let's firm that up.
Sure.
It's only-
The 115,000.
Right, I got 119, but we're in the same ballpark. And it's just a matter of finding it. I mean, I don't think we should just throw the money in there, and then all of a sudden we have to raise assessments by an equal amount, and who wins? You know, we have to find something to offset it that makes it work. But it's a good starting point anyway to have the discussion. And then maybe at the end of the year, we verify these numbers are accurate, and then we really get serious about what we're going to do about it.
The challenge just was a free service, and now it's not.
Well, you're
You have to
right,
have
but
people
the
happy.
problem is that they're paying and they're not feeling like they're getting even what they were promised
Sure.
on the payment. So if we can find some way that you got to keep paying, but at least, hey, you're going to get dry clothes, that's a better solution than where we stand today.
We'll bring that back to you then.
Okay, in reading the staff report, it looked like you're saying that they are programmable, that our staff can program them?
For $6,000.
We can
That's
change
for
them out,
labor,
yeah.
Right.
Oh, okay. So are there any limitations to programming?
I don't believe so. It's just a matter of staff time going out there and.
23
It's
cents
just sending somebody out there, opening up the machine. We only felt it was going to take about 15 minutes, but to go from laundry to laundry, it takes time,
Okay.
then you want to do it.
I guess what I'm after is, if something comes about that's non-standard, we don't have to go to a coin system where they have to make them for the time that we're looking at?
No, there's not going to be any of those.
This is
type of
all
books.
electronic?
It's just, I believe it's either electronic or mechanical, but it's relatively easy. It's just about transportation time
Okay.
in between.
So we'll bring that back to you then.
Okay. Thanks. Bert, you have a question?
The comment that I want to make is that they're not only programmable, but you should consider time of use. You're now paying on time of use, and there's a big difference
What do you
between off-peak and
What does
on-peak.
time of use mean?
And
The heavy rolls are in the afternoon.
Scheduling.
they're scheduling.
Huh.
I think, what you want to do is encourage people basically to do it off-peak. So
That's interesting.
you should, if you're going to reprogram them with time of use in mind.
Do we know
Is
if
that
that's
possible?
easy to do, or is that gonna make a
well,
$40,000 expense to get?
I think it's not whether it's easy to do. That may be easy to do. I think it's the issue of telling people when to watch their clothes. So if that's something that the committee wants to engage in, then that's, but that's the difficult issue.
I'd have to know
in my
the
opinion.
There's a
price
problem
impact.
with that. In a multi-story building, we have a time issue that you can only use the laundry between this time and this time. And I think I have the lady with all those answers sitting right at the back. So if we say you can wash your clothes after 9 o'clock at night, then we'll have complaining residents that the washer and the dryer is
Yeah, but how about,
vibrating my
how about
bed.
until 4 o'clock in the afternoon?
Sorry?
In other words, the peak periods are 4 to 9. Okay, you got a lot of hours in the morning.
Before
and then
4
the
o'clock in
afternoon.
the afternoon, okay.
Yeah. And it's a big difference in cost.
When you come back, can you even ballpark what those price, bands matter? Can we get any estimate of how much we'd save if we encouraged doing the work? I don't want you guys spending, I don't want you guys spending 1,000 in staff time to figure this out, but is it easy to go look at the math and see the usage patterns?
I could provide you a table of the different prices per different time.
Okay,
However,
that's
we
good.
don't know when they're being.
No, that's
currently
good enough
used.
to start the
Yeah.
discussion. That's
I
great.
think it's just SCE's rate.
Let's not get crazy here. That's a
Yeah.
good starting point.
And then my concern is that you have to be ready to tell the resident when to wash and dry their clothes. So.
No, there's less
Yeah.
drastic measures,
Yeah.
but at least let's look at it. Let's know. Let's
Okay.
know.
Exactly.
Well, it's not a matter of telling the residents, it's a matter of putting out a schedule that says, you do it during this time, it costs this much, you're doing it this time, you gotta pay more.
I think the education's easier. The price just changes when they walk in at the different times because it's programmable. We don't have to tell
Exactly.
anybody anything.
Can we program the machines that way?
Yes.
Okay. Bless you, whoever it is.
I don't know if we'll do it, but I'd like to see what the issue is.
I'd like to say one thing about this. You have 22 units using the laundry. Okay, they have 3 laundry rooms. That's correct. The thing is, our hours are from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. But a lot of people work, and they're not going to be able. More people are working. They're younger people coming into the village, and they cannot abide by those hours from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. to save a few bucks here and there. So I just.
Well, that's a good point.
Wanted to bring that to your attention.
I'll follow
Thank
up
you.
on that and say my take, and only, we should definitely not recommend anything with the risk of having a negative reaction because we already did something that got a negative
Correct.
reaction. So we'll just
Yeah,
have to look at it. and
We
make a
need to
decision.
make this a happy solution.
Right.
So please, everybody put on your thinking hats and make this a happy solution. That's all I'm
We
after.
should target making an announcement for budget 2021 is my opinion. That way it just comes in as, fits in the process.
Yeah, but I don't want to wait till 21.
Well,
to
but I'm saying,
change.
okay,
Yeah.
let's get the info and we can
Correct,
talk.
yes. Okay. So with that, I think we are done with our reports. Items for future agenda, program report, okay,
Make
March.
sure you move that one down there, Kush.
Which one?
The dryers, keep it on the.
It will remain there. Yeah, I think Laurie has already taken care of that, yes. Okay, I think we have completed our agenda today, and concluding business is committee member comments. Craig, do you have any comments?
I had no comment.
John Frankel, thank you. Mr. Postone?
No.
Steve? Okay. I think we have a really good meeting. Thank you, everybody. Our next meeting is March 2nd, 2020. And with that, I adjourn this meeting.